Hello to all the young people and all of you who are young at heart. And happy Father's Day to all the fathers and grandfathers, the foster dads and stepdads, uncles and teachers and mentors and friends who nurture and guide and care for and love our children. Thank you so very much for all you do. And also sending our love out to those of you who are longing to be fathers, those of you who have difficult relationships with your fathers, or those of you who are missing your fathers today. We are holding you in our hearts. I've been thinking a lot about my father and how much he loved to sail and how he loved to share his passion for wind and waves with his family. Now, one time, my father, mother, and I went out for a sail on a small lake in Michigan. That day, the wind was blowing pretty strong, and the boat had a nice keel to it. That's like a lean when you're kind of, whoa, almost about to tip into the water, but not quite, as the wind pushes your sails along. Now, another thing about my dad is he always wore a wide-brimmed hat when we went out for a sail, so he could protect the bald spot on the back of his head from the sun. And we also said those hats made sure that we'd have a little adventure. Well, this day we did have an adventure, because just as we were sailing along, a gust of wind lifted up my dad's wide-brimmed hat and flung it down into the water. My dad loved that hat, so he quickly turned the sailboat around to try to sail back and catch the hat. And at that unfortunate moment, another gust of wind came and caught our whole sail and tipped our boat, this time all the way down into the water, along with all of us in the boat and all of our things that we'd gathered in the boat over the years, which began to bob and float away around us in the water. Now, we swam around and we tried to collect our things. And while we were doing that, something happened that hadn't happened to my dad and this boat in the 30 years that he had it. The mast, the big metal pole that holds the sails, started to go down and sink straight into the mud at the bottom of the lake, and the whole boat turned turtle. That means the bottom of the boat was now facing up. So we clung to that with our hands full of towels and doodads that we'd kept on the boat and waited for the kindness of strangers. Luckily, a fisherman in a little fishing boat saw us and motored out to where we were and helped us to pull with their motor to flip our boat back right side up. The problem was that our sails were still attached to the mast, and now they were soaking wet, very heavy, and the wind was still blowing. So the sails were flapping like this against the metal mast, making a loud clanging sound. Now, over the years, my dad had been teaching me how to sail, teaching me how to rig the sails, how to pull them up the mast, and how to sail solo, all on my own. But I was just in my early teens and was still a little new to doing it on my own. But in that moment, my dad thought that I was the best person to jump back on our now uprighted sailboat and quickly pull all those heavy, wet sails down from the boat to secure them. I was a little bit scared and intimidated by this awesome task that I was being trusted to perform. But I did it. I hopped up there. I trusted that my dad knew what skills he had taught me. And so I pulled the sails down in the wind, and I felt like a hero a little bit that day and was so proud that I had done it on my own as we got our sailboat towed safely back to shore. When I read today's Bible story from Mark, it made me think of that sail trip with my dad. In this New Testament reading, Jesus is out on a boat with his friends, and it is a very windy day. all of a sudden this big gusts of wind come and the waves are crashing over the boat, and his friends are very afraid, understandably. But they look to the back of the boat to see what Jesus will do, and there's Jesus, calmly asleep, like there's no trouble in the world. Jesus, why aren't you afraid we're going to drown? But Jesus said, why are you so afraid? Don't you have faith? And he calmed the wind and the waves, and they were all okay. And he taught his followers to trust that God is with them and will help them through any storm. Now, I know we're not going to all, hopefully, be out in boats in big storms during our lives. But I think the storms that Jesus is talking about are ones that we all will encounter in some times in our lives. Storms like big fights with our friends, or difficult challenges we're not sure how to get through in our life, or injustices in the world like hatred in the forms of racism or sexism, homophobia, transphobia, and more. Times when we need to do what's right. We might feel a little scared, but we also can be brave, knowing we have God on our side. And God has given us all the love we'll need in our hearts to help make a positive change. And so, in these types of storms, we can know that we are never alone. We are loved, and God is with us. We might feel scared, but we can be brave to make it through, to be a helper, to make a positive change in the world. God trusts you and me to use the love in our hearts to make the world a more beautiful place. Let's share a prayer together. Dear God of the wind and waves, thank you for the father figures in our lives who, like you, help us to feel loved and equipped to face the world. Help us to know you are always by our side, and your love in our hearts can help us face the mightiest storms of life. Amen. And as we say each week, peace be with you.